That is this going over? Okay. I just think it's funny, the title of the program today. No.
So all our friends who are already tuned in for the pre-show.
Yeah. The Blessed Mother, her mediatorship, and Harrison Butker. I bet you that title
It rolls off the tongue. Spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah. All right. I'm looking forward to it.
We should start making this a part of the show, and only the cool people who are here early get to hear it.
If you're listening now, you're a cool person. Please comment, cool people.
Welcome to Back to the Father, a show about the journey of life focused on our final end, which is God Himself, our loving Father. And now, here's your host, Dave Palmer.
And welcome, everybody, to Back to the Father here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. It's Friday, 1 o'clock Central Time. My name is Dave Palmer, and Cecil Anderson is on the other side of the glass. And this is a program where we focus most of the time on the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas and the Summa Theologia. It is a book that I have great devotion to. It has fundamentally changed my life, and I'm dedicated to teaching it to others, and I really appreciate you tuning in. Today, I was kind of laughing before we started about the title of this program, because I think Cecil came up with this title, something about the Blessed Virgin Mary, her mediatorship, and Harrison Butker. That's probably the first time in the history of social media that the Blessed Mother, her mediatorship, and a kicker in the NFL have been put on a title together. Okay, so Cecil, congratulations on that. Great job.
Thank you.
Very creative.
I put a lot of work into that, just so you know.
So a lot of things going on within the GRN. We're very excited, as I've mentioned. A lot of changes. We're producing our own programs. I found out today, in fact, that I'm going to be hosting A Life Lived Joyfully today at 4 o'clock Central Time in exactly 3 hours. And we're talking about a different topic then. We're talking about why do we need philosophy in addition to theology? It's something that I feel very strongly about, and I'll be asking people, have you ever studied philosophy? And if so, what have you learned? Okay. Hopefully some people will call. Otherwise, it's going to be me jabbering for 55 minutes, and I don't think any of us want that. On this program, originally, as I talked to Keith Downey about on Tuesday morning in my regular Morning Joy segment, talking about how can we use the Summa Theologia of St. Thomas Aquinas to kind of help brush up on our apologetics in regard to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And that's a great topic in and of itself. But as this whole Harrison Butker thing continues to explode and everybody's talking about it, everybody has opinions on it, I just got this thought today, especially as I was going back and forth with Tim and Keith about my segment on Morning Joy next Tuesday morning. And I thought, maybe there's something about the Blessed Virgin Mary, her vocation, her life, that can shed some light on this whole controversy, because most of the controversy has not been about what Butker said about COVID or even Joe Biden or masculinity. It's really been about his comments on women and their role and what they get excited about, and the whole work outside the house, be a mother and a wife inside the house. He went there with what's the term, homemaker. He used that word. That's kind of a trigger word for a lot of people. So I'm going to bring Sissel into this conversation because, well, she's a woman and I'm not. And so I'd like to know what she
Pretty
thinks
bare
about it.
bones specifications there. Like, that's my qualifications. I am a woman.
You are a woman. Yes, here you roar. And if you are out there watching right now, we'd love to have your thoughts as well. I'm actually going to read some of the excerpts from Harrison Butker's talk, because I think there's a lot of people that are commenting on it
without reading it, yes.
Without reading the whole thing. And I got to admit, I have not read the whole thing. When I got home last night from work, my wife was watching the whole commencement talk, and I think it's probably even better to watch it than just to read it, because when you watch something, you get to hear his actual intonation and the way he said it and how much applause was there and was there laughter. You kind of get the whole picture rather than just reading a text. And so I think that's pretty important to do that. But having said that, I'm going to be reading the text, and we're not going to be playing the audio or the video of it during the program today. All right, so please let us know what's on your mind, and we do appreciate it very much. We will be getting into some apologetics of the Blessed Virgin Mary, things like why do we call the Blessed Mother the Mother of God? Why was it important that she be a perpetual virgin? Have you ever wondered, why did an angel get sent at the Annunciation, the Incarnation? Why not just the voice of God? Why not a human being come and tell her, or maybe Joseph come and give her the news? Why was it an angel? And was the marriage between Joseph and Mary a true marriage? Well, St. Thomas Aquinas weighs in on that as well. So those are the kind of things we're going to talk about, and we appreciate you being part of the show today. And let's get right into the topic. So do you want me to read the comments before you comment? I mean, read the excerpts, or do you want to just kind of give us your initial thoughts right off the bat, Sissel?
Oh, gosh. That's a big question, Dave. I don't know. I can... Why don't you read the comments, and I think I have my thoughts, and I think I'll play devil's advocate a little bit to kind of on some thoughts from people that I have heard who have some differing opinions on things.
I mean, this is I don't think he ever imagined that.
I don't think Benedictine expected it to be this big, because I actually do have, in some context, real quick. My best friend graduated from Benedictine, and I was at Benedictine's commencement ceremony last year. My friend actually almost could have been at this Benedictine commencement ceremony because she graduated in the fall, so she had a choice between this one the one last year. She chose to do last year because that's when her friends were.
Who was the speaker last year?
This is really terrible. I don't remember, but it was someone who, I think it was a businessman who'd been a Catholic businessman. It was actually a really good speech, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
It wasn't controversial, but it wasn't.
Much. And you know what? If you or I had given the speech, that exact same speech of Benedictine, it wouldn't have made news.
No, it wouldn't have. It's definitely unfairly treated in that regard, that it's going to be criticized more heavily.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would care if I gave that talk.
Probably
because
not.
It would have never hit the news. Because nobody knows who I am.
If anything, if there's any individual students that might have had a problem with a particular speaker, which I'm sure is something that happens at every graduation. There's a few people who don't like something that a speaker has said, but that's going to keep very internal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to just kind of read some of the excerpts. He started off. I'll read the first comments. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024." See, he hadn't gotten himself in trouble yet.
Oh,
okay.
Perfect.
So at that point, everything was golden. I would like to start out by congratulating all of you for successfully making it to this achievement today. Okay, still. I'm sure your high school graduation was not what you imagined, and most likely neither was your first couple years of college. Now, he gets into the whole COVID thing, and he's recognizing the fact that, and you kind of fit into this category as well, Sissel, that when you graduated in 2020,
it was a virtual graduation.
It wasn't a typical one. Okay,
Nope.
So he goes into that. Then in the fourth paragraph, he kind of starts going there. He says, our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross at a pro-abortion rally. Okay, so of course he's taking a shot at Joe Biden. Now, some people may say, was this the place in a commencement address to kind of get political like that? And I probably would fall in the camp of saying, probably you don't need to go there.
Yeah. Especially since you're kind of preaching to the choir in that regard,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. They all like, yeah, I agree. Okay, he has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. So I think he's making a broader point of the main point I think he was making in his speech overall was that we need to be truly Catholic in an age that is post-God, as he's going to say in his final statement. He says, from the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies into the youth of America, they all have the glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. So in that regard, I think bringing up Joe Biden might have been, appropriate because he's making a point. I think if Barack Obama was president, he probably would not have said anything because Barack Obama is not Catholic.
Right.
So I think that the point that Harrison is making is that there's something unique, something different about Catholics, and that we should, because of our Catholic faith, let that be a reflection in the broader culture, okay? He says, it is safe to say that over the past few years, I have gained quite a reputation for speaking my mind. Whoa, you just.
I was going to say, you just jinxed yourself there, dude.
You just wait a day.
I was going to say, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, he's been pretty out of controversy, actually.
I know. He said, I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me so that I have no other choice but to embrace it and to preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it. Okay, so I think this is an important point here. Accepting your lane and staying in it. Okay, so that I think might be construed as saying, do people have a lane? And that might play into his comment. Again, I'm kind of reading between the lines here. He didn't say this. Do women have a certain lane? And that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Okay, this is a big theme. Our Catholic faith has always been countercultural. Now, I'm jumping around. I'm not reading it line for line. But make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order. And it starts with our leaders. The bishops and priests appointed by God as our spiritual fathers must be rightly ordered. Okay, so now he's touching on a lot of controversial stuff here. He's talking about the bishops, he's talking about the priests, the controversies, right? And then he goes on talking about Saint Jose Maria Escriva, who's a very, popular, famous saint. He says that goes even more so for our bishops. These men who are present-day apostles, our bishops once had adoring crowds of people kissing their rings and taking in their every word, but now relegate themselves to a position of inconsequential existence. Now that, I don't know that I agree with that, that the bishops are inconsequential existence.
Yeah.
Now, when a bishop of a diocese or the bishop's conference as a whole puts out an important document on this matter, or nobody even takes a moment to read it, let alone follow it. Probably some truth to that. I mean, do you read things coming out of your bishop's office? I mean,
yeah, it depends. It depends, I guess, on what the subject matter is. I don't think all bishops write a whole bunch of things all the time. Not all bishops are writers. So
if you're Bishop Barron, people are paying very close attention to
Bishop Barron, a lot of things are, going to be read by him. I think if there's any official letter coming out of my diocese, I do read it.
Okay.
And just to know what's happening and what's important. But I do agree. There's probably a lot of truth in what he's saying there. There's a lot of people who probably don't.
Yeah. So, okay. So now here is the part that is getting the most attention and is most controversial. He says, it is essential that we focus on our own state in life, whether that be as a layperson, a priest, or religious. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourself in this era of human existence. In small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. Okay, so no controversy yet. But here we go. Are you ready?
Brace for impact.
Okay, brace for impact. Okay, Sissel.
Mm-hmm.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved and at this point of your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. Okay, that in the next paragraph are the, okay, so he talks about, the next paragraph he talks about his wife. Do you want me to go on or do you want to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I can, definitely. Yeah, I think on the whole, like, again, most of the topic of the idea of his speech is really beautiful and really good. And that next paragraph you're mentioning, Dave, is a lot about his wife. And I think there can be no controversy that he adores his wife. And I think that's an amazing and beautiful witness. So want to put that out there really quickly. I think what I have seen that a lot of people had problem with this one, there are people, I'm talking about people within the church who are faithful Catholics. I've seen some, kind of like, that wasn't maybe the best way to state things, is I think that people didn't think it was fair that he said, how many of y'all are thinking about your promotions and titles you're going to get in the future? And he didn't say that to the men. Mm-hmm. He said only that it was very shallow for women to be thinking of their future titles. Whereas which I think for both men and women, that's not the important thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's where sometimes people get into that little well, it shouldn't be the most important thing for the men too. They should be most excited to be a husband and father as well. Yeah, and that is I think where a lot of people are just like, it's not so much what he said to the women, it's what he didn't say to the men, is what I have seen.
And I'll read the part about the men as well. So. Yeah, I think I agree with that because if a woman's about to graduate, and I take like your best friend Isabel, she's very accomplished, and she's getting this degree in engineering. And for her to sit there and think, I don't have a boyfriend. My next step is going to get a job.
Right.
And how cool it would be to get a promotion. Mm-hmm. I may get married in 5 years. Now, I'm looking forward to having children. And that's more important than the promotion. But because I'm thinking about a vocation, is there something wrong with that?
Another thing that was pointed out is that obviously, I guarantee it's Benedictine. It's a Catholic college. A lot of those people probably already have boyfriends or girlfriends and are engaged even possibly. But there's also going to be a huge chunk of those people who are not. Mm-hmm. And it kind of can seem like it's going over them being like, well, you're not as worthy at this point in time. Yeah. It's like you're not. And again, my friend is someone who, even though she is very, she's got 3 degrees, she's a very smart person and loves what she's going to be doing. She also is very much most looking forward to being a mom. Mm-hmm. And it's like kind of the idea that those things can't be like separated, what I mean?
And I think, I don't think the message should be exactly the same to the men and to the women.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, so it's not like he has to say the exact same thing.
No, not the same things. I think it's just the way it was said and the weight of it was just a little bit.
And I guess taking kind of a cultural context in mind of how people are today and realizing that this really is going to ruffle a lot of feathers out there as well. And so, but I do want to say In the whole, I loved his speech. I thought it was good. My pastor went on Facebook and said, I thought it was great. And I said, thank you, Father. So we're kind of nitpicking it a little bit. And, you're never going to have a perfect speech.
Oh,
and,
no.
Some of the things he may say, maybe I should have said this or that. Okay. Then he says, I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and a mother. Now, I find that sentence interesting. Like your life begins.
Yeah, that's another one that I think is. I don't think that's been the one that's been pulled out as much.
Yeah.
Actually, there's someone I follow on Instagram who's a devout Catholic who just added a little commentary where she's posted a joke where her husband came up behind her after hearing the speech saying, "I'm so glad you met me so your life could begin." Yeah. That's kind. It's kind of that idea of like, well. Is he saying the same thing like for men their life started when they met, is it for both of them that they met?
Yeah.
Which is kind of not true because there's going to be people who are single their whole life. Mm-hmm. Your life starts when you truly give it to God.
And I wonder if
it's putting a little too much on each other.
I wonder if this script, maybe in the future, because like I said, the overall message is really good.
Right.
But since it's being nitpicked including by us,
it probably needed some editing.
I wonder if he showed this to his wife and said, "Here's my script.
Yeah.
Is there anything in here that you think I ought to tweak?" I'm sure he had no idea it was going to blow up like it did.
I think he goes to, again. He says in the beginning he's not a speaker. He's not a speaker. He's not a public speaker. That is not what he does. And I think it might have been beneficial to have someone who is a public speaker to help him crafting this and how it came across.
Yeah, and I think now that he has entered into that realm of he's not just a Super Bowl champion kicker. He now has thrust himself into the spotlight, and I think he would probably do that from now on. But,
for sure.
Yeah, and I look at my 19-year-old daughter who's a freshman at Benedictine, and if you take that sentence in isolation, her life hasn't begun yet.
Yeah.
And I was like,
you're kind of what has she been doing the last 19 years?
You're saying, because all this is preparation for that,
right? It can also leave out, and especially in this day and age where everything's very, very wonky. But you think about the people who do experience things like same-sex attraction, and who are having to live chastely or living a life chastely for God. Mm-hmm. That also excludes them. There's a lot of it can get really iffy on that.
Yeah, and I think obviously when I got married and when I had my first child, things fundamentally changed. And I think that's what he's getting at, is that there was a fundamental change in his wife when she became a wife, became a mother, but that's not what he said. And so I think again, that's probably a sentence that he would tweak.
We can't put that much on our spouses. They're not our saviors.
Yeah,
that's Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Then he says, I'm on stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. Okay, that's great. No problem there.
Yep.
I am beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
And I say 100%. And it says here that the applause lasted for a long time after that. And I think that was really beautiful. Talking about
but to say all my success is made possible because of this,
every
single bit of it.
But that's going back to I'm just talking about the fact that how much he loves and his wife supports him and stuff like that. I think that's beautiful, and how he's honoring how beautiful, because oftentimes stay-at-home moms are quite highly criticized. That it's not really a job. But again, it's going back to he's putting too much in spouse and not in God.
Yeah, and and this is going to play in really well to when we start talking about the Blessed Virgin Mary, because she is exalted. Harrison Butker is exalting his wife. He's giving her high praise, but still people don't like it. The Catholic Church exalts the Blessed Mother, puts her at a level higher than the angels, and still people are not happy with it. And still people accuse the church of being misogynistic and women-hating, even though they've elevated a woman to a very, very, very high level, okay? He goes on, she is a primary educator to our children. She is the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. Now, that kind of plays into what you were saying earlier about, I wish you had said this about the men.
Yep.
I think he just said that. He said, hey, me being a football player is not as important as being husband and father.
No, exactly.
So would that count?
It counts a little bit, but I think it would have been better if he addressed it to the men, saying whatever you do in the future is not going to be as important as he's saying it only about him. You know what I mean? He's saying it about himself. It probably would help if he was just like, hey, you know. I think it's one of those things where if you're giving a speech to men and women and you're going to address them separately, there should be, because the vocations of husband and wife are equal, and you have to address, they're different, but they're equal. And so I think you kind of have to address them a little bit more.
I wonder if he could have done this all like in one paragraph and kind of address everybody and say the most important thing that you're going to do is become fathers and husbands. You know,
frankly, at a commencement speech, that probably would have made more sense. Because you're just talking about their education. It's a Catholic education, but you're talking about their education. And you could have said things like whether you're going to be in the workforce or at home, you can use this beautiful Catholic education you've been given.
Yeah.
You know?
And even if he had said, you know, many of you women are probably very excited to become wives and mothers.
Yeah.
You know, if you just said that, and that's true. I mean, probably, you know.
No, that's very fair.
Yeah. Okay. I say this to you because I have seen firsthand how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life.
Agreed, yes.
Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you ask her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. Okay, now that's her individual.
Yeah, that's her individual. And I think the idea of that being, it's so beautiful. God can change what we think is like what we think we really desire, and it ends up changing. And you're like surprised at yourself. You're like, if you asked me 5 years ago if this is what I wanted, I'd say no. But now I am very happy with it. I think the way it's stated is a little bit awkward because he's saying like her dreams of career were not fulfilled. Like it just kind of sounds like. It sounds like she massively gave something up when that may not actually be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounds a
little
little
more. It sounds like she at one time in her life was
wanted to do
very much a career woman.
Yeah,
but then
sure.
For her, embracing the life of a wife and a mother was you know in retrospect,
more fulfilling and
is much more fulfilling
as it should be for most for men and women. It's your place in the family is going to be more fulfilling.
Now, did you see the statement that came out from there's a group of, they're either sisters or nuns on, I believe, associated with Benedictine College.
Okay.
And they took umbrage at the fact that, you know, they obviously, as religious sisters, can't be mothers and wives.
Right.
And so I think their point was, well, what about us? You know, we're not wives, we're not mothers,
and they're never going to be.
Yeah.
Their lives are never going to begin because they're never going to be. so again, that sentence alone probably might be the worst one, just because it's excluding a bunch of people, including future priests, future religious sisters.
Yeah, the life begins. Like I would not say, because by definition, your life has not begun.
Yeah.
I mean,
and so I'm just sitting. Sorry, guys, I should probably not even be here because my life hasn't begun.
Yeah, you're waiting for your life to begin.
I'm waiting for my life to begin.
Okay, I know we're being very critical. But like I said, overall, I support him.
No, and he's getting unfairly criticized on all ends from the secular media. I think it's fair to criticize some of these things because he's put himself out here in the Catholic world to say. And again, as he said, he's not someone who does public speeches a lot. He's only 27, 28 years old, so there's probably things he's going to say, look at 10 years from now and be like, that was maybe not he's still learning. He's like, maybe that wasn't the wisest way I could have said that,
Yeah. And, gosh, I wonder in his heart of heart, he's not going to say this publicly, but he's like, maybe I should have played it safer. Or does he say you know what? I'm a dragon slayer. This is my job. This was the whole theme of my talk.
And then maybe that's why they wanted him to be there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right. Okay.
No, it's really because we have someone on Instagram who's saying that they don't appreciate the dissection of it.
They don't appreciate our dissection?
The dissection. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not sure. If you could clarify, Sandy, that'd be great. I'm not sure which
our
one.
Dissection
or are you talking about or about the speech in
group.
general? I'd appreciate if you could go into your thoughts. That would be great.
Yeah. Thanks for the comment.
Yes.
Okay, so now to the gentleman here today. Part of what plagues our society is the lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. Okay, I like that so far.
Mm-hmm.
As men, we set the tone of the culture. And that's an interesting comment. And when it is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. Okay, so he's appealing to male leadership. Okay, this absence of men in the home is what plays a larger role in the violence we see around the nation.
I mean,
Okay,
I'd agree.
now you were saying you wish he had talked about the men being husbands and fathers,
True.
but do you not think that was implied there? You're in the home. That's where he starts.
True.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. I still think it's a little bit. It's the way he's saying it, because he's talking about as a whole. The absence of men in the home is a large role. Plays a large role of violence. I need to put them next to each other. I need to compare it again.
Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Now, the whole thing, correlating, fatherhood and violence, I think that's kind of getting maybe a little bit off track, but okay,
Yeah.
He goes on, be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. Now, I like this next sentence, or this next couple of sentences, I find very interesting. I want your comments on it as well, Sissel. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better. That is a
Wait,
really...
I'm a little bit confused.
Okay,
now. Let me. I'm following along, but I think I've lost my place.
Okay. Do you have the script up?
Hold on, I do, but I think I've lost it.
He says, he's talking to men.
Okay.
You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better. Here's how I interpret that, and you tell me what you think. Let's say a guy just has a Kent Loney who naturally has this he's kind of a DIY guy. He's really smart. He's an engineer, and that can make and using that talent, or maybe you're great with cars, and you can be a good mechanic, or you can whatever you have good math skills, but deep down you want to go off and be an actor, or you want to be a comedian or something like that. Is he saying, hey, there might be something you enjoy, but maybe you just need to do something that would be more suited to make money, raise a family, pay the bills? I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of with that. Is saying just don't go, I don't know. To me, that's a confusing sentence.
Yeah, I would like him to expound on that, actually.
Yeah, boy, I bet you he's not doing any interviews.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame him. I think it's really unfair how much, someone comes under so much fire after something like this. And I'm like, come on, guys, now.
Yeah. Okay, just a couple more sentences, and then we're going to turn our attention to the Blessed Mother. But this all leads into that, okay? I speak from experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker and an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree.
Maybe all he means from that other sentence is just be open to the will of God, and you think you have the plan for you. That was maybe a very complicated way of him saying you have a plan, what you think your life's going to look like, and God's going to change that most likely.
Yeah, be open to cost some audibles and do what's best for your family, perhaps. Mm-hmm. The road ahead is bright. Things are changing. Society is shifting, and people young and old are embracing tradition. Then he gets into the traditional Latin Mass, and then, these are the last ones. Never be afraid to profess the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, for this is the church that Jesus Christ established, through which we receive sanctifying grace. I know that my messages today have had a little less fluff than is expected for these speeches, I'd say. But I believe that this audience and this venue is the best place to speak openly and honestly about who we are and where we want to go, which is heaven. I don't think he ever expected this to go past the Benedictine crowd that was listening that day. Make no mistake, you are entering into mission territory in a post-God world, but you were made for this. And with God by your side and a constant striving for virtue within your vocation, you too can be a saint. And that's how he ended his speech. So, all right. So if you were out there watching, and regardless, did our friend elaborate on her comment?
She did not. No.
Okay.
So I'm not.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was probably not reading them right because I wasn't sure if she's talking about us or about the speech. So sorry. If you do want to elaborate on it, please feel free to comment. We would love to talk about it.
Because we definitely are dissecting it, and but the culture has also dissected it as well.
And I think it's also important that, like, when we're dissecting it, it's not criticizing Harrison. It's not. It's not like just saying, oh, he, this and this. It's like, okay, he said these things. Maybe it wasn't the way that wasn't interpreted the right way always, but like how awesome it is that we have a devout Catholic on an NFL team.
And I think sometimes you have to say things that are going to ruffle the culture a little bit. I mean, Pope Francis said, go out there and, what do you say, make a mess, or he made some comment to young people one time about go out there and kind of stir things up. I forget exactly the wording, but okay, so as we go on to our graphic here, we're going to talk about the Blessed Mother and maybe how this all ties in, because she is the most exalted human person ever in the history of the church. I recently learned that Jesus Christ was not a human person. He was a divine person, which is an interesting distinction. So as I often like to do, I want to look at where in the Summa the articles about the Blessed Mother come in. Okay, so you got to go all the way to Tertia Pars, the third part of the Summa, which begins with the Incarnation, and the first 24 questions have to do with the Incarnation, the hypostatic union, Jesus being true God and true man, and how that all works. One person, two natures, two wills, two intellects, and all that kind of stuff. So it's trying to kind of get to the bottom of who exactly is this person, Jesus Christ. And interestingly, and I just realized this today as I was looking through the ordering of the Summa. Now get a load of this, so you're going to appreciate this. Okay, you ready? You bracing?
I'm bracing.
Question 25 of the Summa is the adoration of Christ. Okay, so we're getting into adoration of Jesus Christ. Are we adoring his humanity? Are we adoring his divinity? What exactly are we adoring? Okay. Question number 26, which, by the way, is the question right before the Blessed Mother is introduced, is Christ as mediator of man and God. I find that interesting because one of the titles of Mary is mediatrix of all graces. And right before Thomas Aquinas introduces the Blessed Mother, who unofficially is the mediatrix of all graces, he talks about Jesus Christ as the mediator between God and man. Now, some people would say, well, okay, he's making a distinction and saying, no, only Jesus is the mediator, not the Blessed Mother. But other people might say, well, maybe he's talking about the mediatorship.
Meteors?
the mediatorship of Jesus Christ as flowing into his mother, as another mediator between God and man. Okay, so it's interesting. So the number 27 is the sanctification of the Blessed Virgin Mary. That has to do with the Immaculate Conception. And then he goes into her perpetual virginity, her espousals, her annunciation, her nativity, her title of Mother of God, whether she suffered giving childbirth. But here's the thing that I want to point out in this is that the section on Mary is inside of the part about Christ. So in this regard, Mary, you might say, based on the ordering of the Summa, is kind of defined by her relationship with her son, okay, which is kind of what maybe, and I'm not putting words into Harrison Butker's mouth, but does our vocation as mother, as wife, as father, as husband, does that define us? Is that part of who we are? Okay, it's not all who we are, but I would say that Mother Mary, her role, her significance, the reason she was exalted was not simply because she was this awesome woman full of grace, but she was exalted because of her role as a mother. Okay, does that mean her life began at the Annunciation, at the Incarnation? I don't think anybody would say that. We don't know a whole lot about her life before that, though.
True.
Okay, so the significance of her life started the moment Jesus came into her womb. So that almost plays into Harrison Butker's point.
I think it's kind of like, as daughter or son of God, that is obviously, your dignity, your that you have. And once you go into, you actually start walking in your vocation, the vocation given by God, whether that be mother, father, laity, or in another vocation, a religious vocation, that is when, you know what I mean? Like that. And maybe, does that make sense? Kind of like,
yeah, I mean,
is when you can say that you're like, really, because you're going to be much more aligned because you're following what God's will for your life is.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're just getting closer to God.
Yeah. Now, I know, you most likely are marriage-minded, and I know that's your aspiration just from what you've told me in the past. So do you feel like there's something in your life right now that's not quite complete because you haven't gotten married, you haven't had children? Or do you feel like, if I live the rest of my days like this and I never get married, I'll be perfectly fulfilled, and that's not going to define me? I mean, what do you feel?
Yes and no. I think it's sometimes dangerous to go on the idea of, because if I am thinking like that constantly, that I'm not fulfilled, that means that I am not allowing God to fulfill me up until this point. There are certain things I recognize that, like, friends and family even can't, like, that there is a longing to be married that friends and family cannot fill for me. But in the meantime, I do think that sometimes it's our duty as Catholic men and women, is to allow Jesus to be that perfect spouse that you need in the meantime. Because again, it's really, you have to be careful, because I cannot look as, when I meet my husband, to be like, oh my goodness, you've saved me. You've you've fulfilled me, and you've completed me. My life is beginning now because I've met you. That's putting such unfair pressure on the husband. And just like it'd be unfair for him to think that for me. So it's kind of like, yes, do I feel, of course, yes, there are times where I'm like, man, it'd be great to have a date right now. You know what I mean? Or it'd be great to have, like, someone I could talk to, someone who is like, wants what's best for me and I want what's best for them. Absolutely. And do I want a family? For sure. However, I think there is a fine line of, like, going too far with that.
Yeah. If you go forward to the slide that has the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception, and I know we talked about this last week, so I'm just going to very quickly mention this, is that there's four main, points in this one sentence about the Immaculate Conception. And one of them is that Mary, in her Immaculate Conception, it was a singular privilege and grace granted by God in view of the merits of Jesus Christ, the Savior of the human race. Okay, so the Immaculate Conception really has reference to the fact that she was saved by her Son. Okay, so I think the point is, and maybe what Harrison Butker is getting at, is that, our relationships do in some way define us. I mean, there's a very big difference between the relationship at work with your coworkers as with your spouse and with your children. Okay, it's a very, very different relationship. And but again, I think to Sissel's point, he focused a lot more on that with the women than he did with the men. All right, so a couple of things. We'll just go over some of these apologetics with the Blessed Mother, and one of them is her perpetual virginity. And one thing that you have to realize, that the official teaching of the Catholic Church is that Mary was maintained her virginity before she gave birth to Jesus, while she was giving birth to Jesus, and after she gave birth to Jesus as well. So her entire life, and why would that distinction need to be made? Thomas goes into a lot of detail about that, and I know some people have said, well, why does it even matter? Well, does that mean sex is bad? Does that mean that she would have defiled herself? That seems to put a very negative kind of tone on sexuality. Maybe that's very old-fashioned. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I think it's more has to do with the uniqueness of her vocation as being the vessel that is going to bring forth the Savior into the world, and it had to be different. Okay, and I don't think it's a judgment, because nowhere in the Summa does it say that sex is bad. In fact, he says the exact opposite, right? And he does say that the primary principle and purpose of marriage is the begetting and bringing forth children. Okay, and if sex was bad, then that means that the sacrament of marriage is just absolutely nonsense and actually would be a bad thing because you're not going to bring forth children without the sexual act, right? So that's that. The next one is the espousal of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And as I mentioned in the introduction, he definitely comes down on the fact that the marriage between Joseph and Mary was a true marriage. And he says something, and I think I may have talked about this in the show before, is that he seems to imply that they would have been willing to have a regular, consummated marriage, but since that was not what God desires, they were willing to give that up. Okay, so it wasn't they were like, ooh, gross, cooties, we would never do that. I think they were totally at the mercy of the will of God, and that when Joseph realized that this was going to be a celibate marriage, then he was like, all right, that's fine, no problem, and I think that's the key, and that's why it was a real marriage, because they were willing to do whatever God willed. If you have anything you want to break into for about this, feel free to. And again, now as we're getting close to the end of the program, if you're out there and you're watching and you have any comments, please put them on the social media platform that you're watching, and we will get to those comments. And if you are watching this on a recorded basis and it's not the 1 o'clock Central Time hour on Friday, well, then go ahead and put comments. And you can even email them to us if you'd like, backtothefather@grnonline.com, backtothefather@grnonline.com. Okay, and then the last couple of things is Mary the Mother of God? I love that image. That looks like the kind of images you've been making recently, Sissy. You've gone to kind of the darker, look. Have you see this one that I have up there right now?
I do. Yeah, no. Yeah. It's really, but it makes like the glow around their heads like really pretty and stand out. It's really beautiful.
Kind of cool, yeah.
Sorry to our Instagram folks that can't see it. Sorry,
Sorry Instagram.
Sorry.
Mary is Mother of God.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, the whole point about Mary as Mother of God, it has to do with the hypostatic union. You had divine nature and human nature come together in one person. That one person had both human nature and divine nature. So it would be appropriate to say that person is God. That person is who Mary gave birth to. Therefore, if you give birth to God and you're the mom, you're the mother of God. Okay, that's kind of the way that works out. And then, as we talk about Mary's vocation, this last graphic here, Thomas talks about latria being the worship that we only give to God. And then there is something called dulia, which is a type of, air quotes, worship or reverence that we would give to a human Lord, that we would give to saints. And this is dulia, but it's not latria. It's not worship. Even though he sometimes uses the word worship, it's not the same as what we owe to God. And because Mary was willing to submit to her role, because Mary, entirely fulfilled the will of God, never sinned, responded to the graces that God desired for her to have, she is given the exalted response from us of hyperdulia. Okay, that means that it's like dulia, reverence to a human being that's at like a whole different level. It's not latria, it's not worship like we give to God, but it's hyperdulia. And I would relate that to the fact that if you look at Father's Day and you look at Mother's Day, and you were to say which one gets more attention, which one is more exalted in our culture, and I would say without a doubt, it's Mother's Day. Mother's Day is so much more celebrated, so much more important than Father's Day. Why? Because I think we naturally know that the vocation to motherhood is very special. And I think if you boil down Harrison Butker's comments, that's what he was trying to get at. Mm-hmm. And if his words were probably not always as delicate or as thought through as we might like, we got to forgive him for that. Sure. Because I think if you take the message as a whole, it was really, really good.
I agree. No, yeah, definitely. It's just unfortunate things are just always going to be taken slightly out of context. Keith had commented, I kind of lost it because when you accidentally close your Instagram thing, it doesn't save, you don't get to see the comments again. But he had said that he had heard some Catholics were concerned because he made some comments towards NFP. I have not been able to find those exact comments, but I have heard something similar.
In his talk.
The word, I don't think NFP was ever used in his talk. Could be wrong. Let me see. I'm doing a search function on the page.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but that was one thing. Yeah.
Before I go on Tuesday to talk about Keith, because this is kind of the dry run. This is a dress rehearsal, you know.
Gotta get all the thoughts out so you can.
Yeah. So we're gonna kind of talk about the whole issue, and I don't think Harrison Butker ever mentioned the Blessed Mother in the talk. Maybe he did. I haven't read the whole thing.
Good question. I'm trying to remember.
Whether
I have read it, but I read it pretty quickly, so I don't think it was a fair, to say like, oh, I read the whole thing.
So,
let's see.
Anyways,
one random thing.
Okay.
One random thing that has nothing to do with the men and women like debate and stuff like that. One line that was pulled out that someone pointed out that was a little bit problematic that I thought was really interesting is that he said, when you embrace tradition, success, worldly and spiritually, will follow, which a lot of people kind of thought that was very Joel Osteen, prosperity gospel, which is really funny because that didn't work out so well for Job. And
right. Well, in the end, it did.
In the end, yes, but like,
back.
It wouldn't. I don't think you'd say immediately this guy was like,
he had
worldly
a tough life.
Successful all the time.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny.
Yeah, and again, I think if somebody had said this talk is going to be, the on all the websites for the next week after you give it, he probably would have gone through with a finer tooth comb and maybe excised a couple of these comments, and then maybe if nothing else, kind of fine-tuned them a little bit and all that. But I don't think he ever thought this was going to go beyond the
like you mentioned campus. With the content, the theme of it and the idea of it was very good, and it was just simply a little bit of a fumble in execution at times. That's all.
And if he had given this 50 years ago, I don't think anybody would have batted an eye.
Sure.
So you have to also understand the cultural condition of it. It's kind of like just give one example in the Summa where St. Thomas Aquinas talks about, that it's okay to turn heretics over to death. From a modern day notion, we're like, that sounds so barbaric.
Like, what are you talking about?
But that's what was going on in the 13th century. Okay, that was pretty common. And it's the way they dealt with heretics, but they always gave them a few chances to repent. And, so I think, anyways, if nothing else, it gives us a lot to think about. I mean,
hey, for better or for worse, the Catholic Church was put in the public eye quite heavily. And people could either, are going to either read it and be madder, or they might read it and be interested.
Yeah.
So it's,
One thing that I will say, and this is probably the least significant thing that Harrison Butker needs to have in his mind, but I'll say it anyways, is that he is a kicker in the NFL. Kicking in the NFL is, and I've never been a kicker in the NFL, okay, but it is a mental game. I remember a game I watched last year where there was a kicker who I think missed 4 extra point kicks in a row, and I could probably kick extra points, but this is a professional kicker, but his mind was so distracted. So I just wonder, and again, this is just a side note, this is not anything that Harrison Butker probably needs to be, losing sleep about, but next year when he gets on that field, and his profile has raised, and he's got people, perhaps, maybe they've forgotten about it by then, I don't know. But then people are booing, people are protesting. Does it get in his head? Does it make him a worse football player? Does it even matter?
I feel so much for the kickers. It always stresses me out when it's like, especially when it's like a game point. Yeah. Like if they get this, they are going to win, and if they don't, they will not. You know what I mean?
Well, last year he won the Super Bowl with a kick.
He did.
I mean, he had to
can you imagine the pressure he was under in that moment? I would have been like, absolutely not, send someone else. I am done.
I know. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Wild to me.
All right. Well, that is going to do it. I hope everybody can tune in to Life Live Joyfully in about 2 hours, and I'll be hosting that. And also, of course, tune in to all of the programs on the GRN, especially those that are produced by the GRN, including Morning Joy every morning, 6 o'clock Central Time, Monday through Friday. We Sing Our Faith, 9 o'clock Saturday mornings, Spirit World, 10 o'clock Saturdays, and then Little Old Us with Back to the Father, 1 o'clock Fridays, right here at all the Guadalupe Radio Network social media sites. Thank you for joining us. And if you have comments again during the week, if you're not watching this live and you want to contact us with any comments or suggestions or criticisms about Sissel, you can email.
Just address those to me. Thanks, guys.
Just about Sissel, okay? Don't go criticizing me, okay? No, I'm kidding. Back to the Father at grnonline.com. God bless you. Have a great weekend, and we hope, God willing, we'll see you next Friday on Back to the Father here on the Guadalupe Radio Network.
Thanks for joining us for Back to the Father. And don't forget, the glory of God is the human person fully alive. If you have comments about the show, email Dave Palmer at grnonline.com.